Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show here on ChannelOne television. On The Point of View, we get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We have a very interesting show for you tonight, and it's been a week and a few days since the majority leader in Parliament announced that the Kotoka International Airport will be renamed Accra International Airport. Tonight we have a historian to bring us historical perspectives on the man Kotoka, on the circumstances surrounding the naming of the airport after him, and also some issues around renaming generally. Stay with us. Welcome back. So on the National Fugu Day, the Wednesday announcement, my guest is Kweku Daku Ankra, who's a historian we know on the ChannelOne platform. Kweku, welcome to the show. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
So it's good to talk to you again. Usually when these discussions happen, people discuss from various perspectives. Why is it important for us to have a historical angle to these national discourses? Because even though it started in Parliament with the Mahama Yariga speaking and of course Apenyo marking, why is it important to situate these discussions from an important historical context?
Thank you very much. Because normally when issues of this nature come, it tends to take political angle. And people often will argue based or from their own partisan prism. And as a result, they kind of, where I belong, this is where we stand. So those who normally are affiliated with the event will sort of try to defend it. And those who want that event to also be changed will also come with their ideas. So then there's the need for historians to unpack this and try to show exactly what transpired when with objective analysis of the situation to let people judge for themselves whether the event and what is going to happen is actually right or wrong. So this is exactly what we are coming to do tonight.
So we cannot separate history from politics. I recall the name holidays where under MPPs previously we had the August 4 as the Founders' Day, the scrapping of July 1 as Republic Day, the institution of Constitution Day for January 7. These are important conversations because there's always some politics and also some history, right?
Yeah. So normally it is the politician that politicize history.
Okay.
The history is there. What happens? Why don't we ask ourselves that in other jurisdictions? What they started from the beginning, it is there. And then it reaches a time if there is a national agitation for the change to come, they also have the conversations about it and they effect the change as they deem necessary. So from the example that you gave, if for instance, everybody know the history of the country, that we know that political party was founded in a specific day of, let's say, 4th August 1947. And that does not mark the Independence Day. And so everyone knows this history, and then let's say you are going to give another day, which is a political party's formation day, as a national holiday. Then this is not history. You are sort of politicizing the period. But if it's 6th March 1957, whether you belong to the political party that was in power that day, it is a national celebratory day where, irrespective of your political party, you got independence and you must move forward.
Interesting. Of course, I remember the last time I spoke to you about the renaming, there was a discussion about naming the University of Ghana after J.B. Dankwa.
Yeah.
And then a lot of controversy. And I think you had to give some history around his role in the setting up of the name. I didn't recall that much controversy when UST was to be named KNUST. Why the difference? How come when UST was to be named Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, we didn't hear a lot of controversy, but when some people proposed under the previous administration that UG be named after JB Dankwa, what's the difference between those two?
So the difference is that normally people want association with how the things came about. So if you look at Nkrumah's role in the KNUST, one, though the original idea of having a second university was part of the colonial objective, and during this time when it was being touted, Nkrumah was also around as a prime minister. So even though the British has not left and colonialism was still with us, Nkrumah, then we wouldn't say there was a total autonomy for the country, or the British have total control. No, because the prime ministership or leadership has changed hands. We have gone to election in 1951, and Nkrumah has been elected to become the leader of government business, and as a result, he was the one in the management of affairs, despite the fact that the British have the Governor General serving as someone whose opinion must be sick at all times in trying to come out with policies. So he must give consent to some of these policies as well as laws that we roll out. It is without question. So the idea of a second university was in tandem with what had already happened to Legon being founded, because when Legon was being founded, one of the things that Asante Hene raised was that since the Ashanti's cocoa money is going to be a chunk of what was going to be put into building University of Ghana, if any other idea of a second university should come, it should be placed at Kumasi. And I think Asante Hene made a very important argument, which the colonial government as well as Nkrumah himself as a leader of government understood. So when the idea of second university came, because ideally people would think that Cape Coast is the center in terms of education, so the second one should go there. But Asante Hene also made his bid, a very forceful one, and he was right that chunk of the cocoa farmers were coming from that enclave. And as a result, when the idea of a new university came, the Kumasi Technical University, Technology College, that was the first original, the Kumasi Technology College was booted. Then it came, and it was under Nkrumah. It was during Nkrumah's tenure as a prime minister, but as I said, it's a colonial project. Then over the year, there was a need for expansionism, and within the expansion, Nkrumah contributed as a leader of the country until the university, the college, finally reached its fully fledged university status. All this was done under the Nkrumah's tenure as a president of Ghana. By 1960 going. So this shows that Nkrumah is really affiliated to the bringing up of the university, how he contributed towards its movement from Kumasi Technology College to become a fully fledged university.
So there was no controversy around Nkrumah's role at Tech. Which is why when the name KNUST was proposed, there wasn't much of a...
Yes, because what is there to go and argue about, okay? Maybe people could have said that, okay, let's give it to Prempeh because Prempeh was also part of it. But in terms of bringing up of the university and how it became a fully fledged university, this was solely Nkrumah's effort.
So, but how different was that from J.B. Dankwa and Legon? Legon is not the same, right?
Because it's not the same because J.B. Dankwa actually supported Techi Benson, who raised this issue as the Gold Coast Legislative Council as a second speaker. Okay. When Techi Benson raised the idea as a leader of the African group in the Legislative Council that there's the need to name the university, or the need for the university to come about after the Elliott Commission report and how it was overturned and they fought for it to be returned back as one university for the Gold Coast. He made that effort, okay? When he spoke, he was seconded by Professor Christian Gonsalves, who also spoke that there's the need for it and that cocoa money should be used. And then Dankwa, who spoke third, seconded what the two have said and also re-echoed what Gonsalves Baita have stated in terms of leaving the cocoa farmers and go back. Because historically, when it was being written, people went and took the legislative Hansard and then they quoted only Dankwa's version. People often think that he's the one who mooted the idea, but the downside of at that time 1948 is there. So even after that, for the university to come, it didn't end there. They have to form the Bradley Committee. It was Bradley Committee that showed where the university should start, the finances that needed and everything before it became. And that Bradley Committee, Charles Techi Benson was involved. Dankwa was not even part of it, of how the university was to be constituted.
But why was Kotoka the principal person the airport was named after?
So what it happens was that during the coup, okay, the abortive coup, which was done by 120 armed reconnaissance squadron at Reki Regiment in Togo, who it was led by Sergeant Samuel Atta, and then Moses Yabua, and then they have Osepoku with them. So they actually mooted this idea, and some was argued that the junta under Canada Assassin at the Parachute Division at Tamale, as well as Major Achab, were also, even then Major Asante were also involved. But over the years, we when during the court martial, they were not involved. They were actually, so it became these three principal members, okay, Post-coup, and then Yabua, and then Ata. So in the course of it, first they came to Accra, and then they were able to overcome the Flagstaff House, who then used to be the how do you call it,
the seat of government.
Not the seat of government then. It has become Ghana Armed Forces, their headquarters. So they went there, and then they saw first they killed Kotoka in the crossfire when they met. When they proceeded to, how do you call it, the airport, the Flagstaff House. It was there that they killed Kotoka's Batman, which is say Gruncy. So it was say Gruncy, and they killed him. And then they proceeded. While this was going on, Captain Avevo heard it, and he wanted to go in, and he was also shot. Okay, and so that's how they killed him. And then later they killed C.Y. Boklo, who was also there around that time. So
was Kotoka killed at the airport?
So Kotoka's bullet-ridden body was found there. There, that it was near what is now the forecourt of the airport. There, it was there close to the road. So that's where later they found him after the coup was aborted. So from there, then they proceeded to airport, GBC, and then to the seat of government, which is the Christabon Castle. So at the Christabon Castle, that was where Ankara was there. Osepoku went there, but before they could grab Ankara passed through the window and jumped into the Atlantic Ocean, and then swam all the way from the castle end and went ashore.
Are you serious?
And fled. Yes, that's what General Ankara did.
So this is the NLC, Ankara, Efrifa, Kotoka, being the three architects of the Nkrumah downfall. Ankara swam.
And at that time, the only member
General
was
Ankara.
Yes, that's
he swam
all the way through the sea. He's a gunman, and so he's a fisherman.
This is recorded history.
This is a recorded history. So he swam,
so
and
the Kupis couldn't get him because he swam.
Yes, he swam and he went away.
Amazing.
That is why Osepoku was not shot, because he didn't kill like Ata and Yabua. I get the point. So he fled ashore. But at that time, Afrifa was the only one who was not in Accra. He was in Tamale performing a national duty. So the people then went to the GBC, and they announced that they have taken reins of government, and that in the crossfire they have been able to capture Kotoka, and he has been killed. Unfortunately, counter attack was made, and they were able to apprehend the coup makers. And that led to their being arraigned the court martial.
I see. So after you were court martial, and then they were obviously executed.
Yeah, a committee, yeah.
So the leader of the government at the time was General Ankara.
Yeah, it was General Ankara.
So he survived.
He survived.
And Efrifa also was not touched.
He was not,
because he was not in Accra.
He was not in Accra.
So Kotoka was the only person who fell of the three.
Of the three.
I see. So which government decided to name the airport after Kotoka then?
So he fell in 1967, okay? So when he fell, this became a moment of, national mourning, because people felt that they have been able to overthrow Nkrumah, and whatever anti-democratic agenda or the way they want to remove him democratically, if they didn't have opportunity to do so, these people were seen as liberators of the time, particularly by the opposition of the time, who realized that without any artificial mode of changing the leadership, there will be no need there will not be opportunity for them to come. So they were also involved. Most of them have become members of the NLC. And so when the idea was mooted about how to commemorate the sudden pass of General Kwasi Kotoka, what they thought of is that to do something to kind of immortalize his memory for what he did to overthrow Nkrumah's regime. And so they came out with the General Kotoka trust decree. And trust decree had a lot of people, okay?
So this trust decree was 1969
yes.
NLC decree. So this was still under the Afrifa Ankara government.
Yes.
This was before Buzia came.
Buzia later came on to codify it democratically into an act in 1971.
So the NLC decree that you refer to, we have extracts here. I have some very interesting names which maybe we can go through here. So the creation of the trust is established a trust known as General Kotoka Trust Fund.
Yeah.
It shall be a body corporate with perpetual succession and a common seal, and may sue and be sued in its own name. Now, the trust shall have the power to acquire, hold, and dispose of any movable and immovable property. Now, I wanted to show you a couple of things. The patrons of the trust are listed. I'll ask you a question about them. Yeah. So let's go to the patrons of the trust. Then I'll come to the board of the trust, board of trustees, before we come to the objects of the trust. So patrons of the trust: Lieutenant General J. Ankara, Chairman of the National Liberation Council; Mr. J.W.K. Halley, Vice Chairman of National Liberation Council and IGP. Do you know who this man is?
Yes, he was one of the those people. He was the inner circle of the people who organized the overthrow in Nkrumah. And
he was the IGP at the time of the overthrow.
Yeah.
So he continued as the Vice Chairman of NLC, as an IGP.
Yeah.
So he's from the Volta region, correct?
Yes.
Then there was Nanase Oseajiman Prempe II, KBE Asante Hene.
Yes.
Ni Amugi II.
Yeah.
That will be the government chair.
Yes.
Nana Oforiata II. That will be the Ochihene.
Yeah.
Then there's Asantilo Sandemanab, Vice President, Upper Region House of Chiefs.
Yes.
Nana Utu the 11th, Abakrampahene.
Abakrampahene, that's the chief of Abra.
Nana Kusi Apia, Omahini of Wenchi.
Yeah.
Togbe Ajatekpo the 6th, Paramount Chief of Abatime. Mr. J. Brahma, Kanyen Sura.
Yeah. He used to be a member of Nkrumah's regime until he was found for bribery, Brahma Committee of a bribery allegation.
So he was a member of the NLC?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So he was of the Northern region. And Nana Kwamina Anesi the 4th, Paramount Chief of Dutch Secondary.
Yeah.
So these were the patrons.
Yeah.
Then there's also the Board of Trustees, which I want you to comment on. Mr. Justice Niama Olenu.
Yeah, Justice Niama Olenu was in the Supreme Court. He was in the Supreme Court during Nkrumah time. They appointed him by the colonial regime, and this is a man who was also he was part of the nationalism agenda. He at one time became the General Secretary of Buzia's party, Ghana Congress Party. He became the General Secretary, he became a member of NLM. Okay. And prior to that, he's a staunch opponent of Nkrumah. Okay. That he was one of those people who took Nkrumah to Galmanches Palace, that he's not coming from Accra, and he has no right to contest the parliamentary seat at Ashiedu Keteke, now Ododo Diodiu.
So that's Niama Olenu.
Niama Olenu.
There's Mr. Daniel Chapman Yaho.
Yes, so Chapman Yaho is also somebody who was, how do you call it, diplomat and so on.
I see. Yeah. Then there's Solicitor General, Auditor General, Director of Legal Services, all ex-official members. Then there's Miles Hagan, a member, Mrs. E. Akufuado, a member, Mrs. H.S. Bannerman, a member, and then a couple of ex-official members. So it looks like this was well set out. So there were the patrons who are like the high level, then the board, and then they now have the objects, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. Maybe let's read that. Yeah. The renaming of the Accra International Airport, Kotoka International Airport, after the late Lieutenant General Emmanuel Kwasi Kotoka, without any financial burden being placed on the trust fund. That's the first object. Second, the naming of an army barracks, Kotoka Barracks, after the late General Kotoka, without any financial charge being placed on the trust fund. See, the erection of a statue of the late General Kotoka as a warrior in full battle dress at the spot where he fell, near the Accra International Airport, and the creation of a quiet garden in the area surrounding the statue. That's C. D. The acquisition by the trustees in favor of the trust of that portion of land situated at the Accra International Airport, where it is proposed to erect a statue of the late General Kotoka and to create a quiet garden to surround it. E. The provision of tombstones for the late General Kotoka and other gallant soldiers who fell during the insurrection of 17th April. F, the acquisition and furnishing of a house at a total cost not exceeding 17,000 cedis for the widow of the late General Kotoka, Madame Monica Kotoka, for life, and thereafter in equal share to her children by the late General Kotoka, whose names are set out in the first schedule. And then the acquisition and furnishing of a house, the amount is listed for the widow of the General, and also for Madame Ethel Nokai Kweno for life, and thereafter to her children. Then the acquisition and furnishing of a house at a total cost not exceeding 10,000 for the widow of the late Captain C.Y. Boklo, Madame Vera Enyonam Boklo for life in equal share. And then the same is done for Captain A.K. Avevo's widow, Madame Noviegbo Akume, and then Ako Damoji and Mabel Osai. So this will be the widows,
the widows
of Avevo. So Avevo had multiple wives. And then there's also a house for the mother of the late Sergeant Osei Grunshi, Madame Tampori Grunshi. And then there's other things they list there. So it was a very elaborate, which means that the trust, even though Kotoka was the main beneficiary, there were other beneficiaries too.
Yes, so the intention was, as for Kotoka, it was to immortalize it because it was there were three leaders, then heading that NLC. You know, when they do coup, they do their own council, and the council members, the leadership. And for the military phase, you have General Ankara, you have the Kotoka and Afrifa. They were the major phases because they believe in those in the military, and I respect that it's have. So in fact, Ankara was not part of the coup. So was Kotoka. Kotoka originally was so was Afrifa originally.
Really?
So Halle, Deku, and Kotoka, and there are other conspirators. And later
so the 66 coup, Halle, IGP, Deku, and Kotoka were the key.
And others, the few. People believe that because they wanted to look so, how do you call it, national. Other than that, they will look like the airways were the one who was staging the coup. So the idea of trying to move away, if you read Soldiers and Military and the Soldiers in Ghana, book by Simon Bainham, you talk about this analysis, okay? And then in that work, you talk about the military, how to sort of de-ethnicize some of the military structure. So Afrifa came in, and then...
So Afrifa was from...
Afrifa was an Ashanti, okay? Then you have Ankara. Ankara was suggested, according to if you read the book by Justice A.N.E. Emisa. He said when they were going to speak about the coup, they didn't even know much about what they were going to say about removal of Nkrumah. So he crafted
Ankara.
Justice A.N.E. Emisa. He crafted. He's a Fanti Garman, okay? And he became Appeal Court Justice, and later Professor of Law, and became the head of University of Ghana Law School.
Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll go through this again. We are just trying to understand the history around Kotoka, and then also link that to the renaming. We've read to you portions of the trust set up in 1967 originally, 69 originally, and then later on it became a bill. We'll now come to the controversy about the renaming and those who have been proposing for it to be named after either Kwame Nkrumah or some other significant national figure. This is the point of view. Don't go away. Welcome back. So the point of view tonight is more like a history lesson around the naming of the Kotoka International Airport in 1967 as the, of course, it was called Accra International Airport. The majority wants to essentially announce that there will be a bill to change the name back to the Accra International Airport. Kweku Dakwankra is my guest. So Kweku, you're saying to me that there's a certain sense in which the administration of the NLC felt indebted to Kotoka, and that the way he was killed in that coup, they felt obligated to do something to honor him.
Absolutely.
For his role in overthrowing Nkrumah and also being a prominent figure of the NLC.
Yeah.
Okay. So and it was the NLC under Afrifa and Ankara who started this process.
Yeah.
So the airport was named under NLC.
Yeah.
So when Buzia won the election in 69-70, he perpetrated this.
In fact, by 69, Ankara has fell out. Somewhere along the line, there was an issue of allegation, bribery allegation against Ankara, and as a result, have to give way to Afrifa to take over from there.
So Ankara was the chairman of NLC.
Yes, was the chairman of NLC.
And Afrifa eventually became the head.
He became the head. by the time we reached 69.
And then NLC introduced democracy, but CPP was banned.
Yes, CPP was banned.
So Buzier's party won the election then.
Yeah, so what happened that immediately after the coup, the CPP, Seven Nkrumah, was declared banned, and some of his members like Ambrose Yankee, Boy Moses, aka Indede, okay, and Matthew Aka. These 4 people were declared persona non grata, and £10,000 was put on their head for committing murder and killing people, and that anyone who will find them anywhere should bring them home to face justice. That's what the military put out. Later, they increased Nkrumah's money
bounty.
Bounty on his head to £100,000.
That anybody who finds Nkrumah should bring him.
Should bring him.
Wow.
So this is how they did it. Means all the political party activities was prescribed.
So when NLC decided to organize elections, CPP was not part.
So in 1969, there was the need to recraft the Constitution of 1969. One of the major thorny issue that happened at the Constitutive Assembly, then crafting the Constitution, was the two issue, very boiling one, and later became problematic. First one was about people's prescribed organizations that came to that decree, and that decree stated that CPP and its members are prescribed. So that's his first one. And when this was being debated, Peter Alajete opposed it and gave legal argument that this would not be different from what they accuse Nkrumah of doing with the so-called one-party state of 1964. The most, for me, cogent argument was raised by James Mercer, lawyer James Mercer, who has been chair of the Ghana Airways. That is the father of our brother and you say Japa Mercer. He made arguments at the assembly that when you are setting a trap for your enemy, don't make it so big that sometimes you yourself, when you fall into that big trap, make it small so that you can climb up. So that's what they have said they are prescribing party. It will affect some members.
So he also didn't agree with the banning of CPP.
Yes, and then he went on to argue about the second argument about people who they claim that they were CPP members, they should be banned when they are found fault from any committee of inquiry. His argument is that the formation of the committees of inquiry has been given too wide a spectrum that they can investigate you and you will not bring a lawyer to the committee, and the committee will find you guilty, and when they find you guilty and the committee says, as for you, because of what you did under Nkrumah's government, you can no longer serve in any capacity in the democratic government, then that is the rule. You can't do anything about. No court can challenge it. So they brought this kind of things, and James Mercer was really aggrieved about that because he knew that it was going to affect somebody. And truly, he was like a prophet. When the 1969 election was run, someone like C.K. Tedem, who was a CPP member and has become a Progress Party member, won the Kasana Nankana seat. And when he won, his opponent, lawyer Elugu Terry, took him to court that under that rule, that anyone who has served under Kwame Nkrumah's government and something has been found on him, it makes him incapable of contesting for election. Wow. So it was sent to court. And then the court ruled against C.K. Tedem.
And he won a genuine election.
He won a genuine election. And based on what they have put in the constitution, it made sure that C.K. Tedem never saw the inside of the parliament. So a new election was run there, and he went and brought his niece, Catherine Tedem, who came to contest and won against Elugu Terry. It is there. Wow. Not only that, how do you call it? Lawyer Francis Awono-Rena, who has contested with Komala Abodebo at Angulo, Bodema also won. That is why Bodema didn't become the leader of NAL in parliament, and the mantle had to fall on G.K. Agama. What happened was that when they went to the 69 election, Bodema won. And then Francis Awono Williams also brought, just like Elugu Taylor has done. And the court ruled against Bodema. And Bodema could not have to also walk away from parliament. And they do a new election.
So this law that prescribed people who had been affiliated with CPP was bound to catch a lot of people. And you raised this point to suggest what, that some of the things Nkrumah was accused of by the people who overthrew him, some of the laws they set up were also not democratic.
What I'm trying to say is that the advice that James Mercer has warned when they were crafting the law, that when you are setting a trap for your friend, do it small so that when you yourself you fall in, you can climb up. Has court secreted them. One of their own members, and it's not only him, it was all over. People have to go to court based on that because of their former association to the CPP, and now they were UP members.
And all of this is happening.
PP members.
All of this happening under Buzia's government.
These things happened during the 1969, the crafting of the Constitution, 1969 Constitution. The so-called Constitution, people always make fuss that it has bills of right. Okay, it's supposed to have fundamental human rights, and it is the first thing that ever happened to the country. That constitution itself was riddled with a lot of fault, like trying to prescribe, because the argument is that Nkrumah had prescribed parties for participation. Yet within that same constitution, you claim to have bills of right, have stop people from political participation and representation of their constituents. This is nothing different from the Constitution of 1964 that was turning the country into one-party state, because when we talk about democracy, there must be proper participation and representation. And if it is not there and is prescribing some people, then that constitution is not reflective of democracy.
Be that as it may, when Buzia came, he sort of legalized under democratic dispensation the Kotoka name, correct?
Yes.
So there was a bill that codified it. But Buzia was in power for less than 3 years.
Yes, so people should understand that it was not like the NLC government was so loved. In fact, after taking over, there was Sepoku's coup, the first one, getting to about 5 people. It was settled. There were some 10 Nigerians who they blamed that Nkrumah has trained them to enter into the country and to come and overthrow. And they were 4 of them were arrested.
So NLC had many issues.
They had many issues. Again, they say Nkrumah was training about 101. It was Kotoka who said it, that at Guinea Conakry, and that he has gone to got a aircraft to invade Ghana. And as a result, one Russian trawler at Sekendi Takrady, the Takrady port, was arrested. That it was the trawler Nkrumah used to intend to use to come and do coup. So all these things went on. So it is not that the regime was so loved that there were no counter coup. In fact, in my last interview with Ahumeka Lindsay's father, Eja Ahumeka at Cape Coast, he also do some counter coup and he was arrested. So it was not that the pro-Nkrumah's group went quietly. They were a thorn in the flesh, and that is what gave the impetus or the energy to the Operation Guitar Boys
to try and overthrow the
yes,
NLC.
And they named it Operation Guitar Boy because in the December of 1966, the popular song that was in West Africa is Sir Victor Owafo song, which is Guitar Boy. He sang some to Mami Wata Guitar Boy, as well as, so in Guitar Boy when he play, one of the chorus is Mami Wata, but
who is this musician?
He's a Nigerian high life maestro.
Called what?
Sir Victor Owafo.
So his song was Guitar Boy.
Guitar Boy. And he is the same man who sang that song you always sing, you don't know, Jolomi. Jolo.
He sang that song.
He sang that song, and that is how he went global with his song.
When we come back, we'll find out why subsequent governments did not try to change the name, and whether they are, now that this government has decided, or at least has announced intention to change the name of Kotoka International Airport, whether the suggestion that it should be named after a person holds, or whether the Accra is enough. This is the point of view. Stay with us. So we're discussing the change of name proposed for Kotoka International Airport. Kokuda Krankra is a historian who's given us different perspectives on some of the issues around this. Of course, Kotoka's role in the NLC, in the overthrow of the CPP, and his tragic death in an attempted coup was what endeared him to the public at the time. And indeed, he's explained why in 1967 the Kotoka Trust was set up, not just for him, but for other people who died in the 17th April 1967 insurrection. And we've also spoken about Buzia's government a bit. So Buzia was overthrown by a Champon.
Yeah.
A Champon, for some people, was more amenable to the ideas of Nkrumah. Yet he did not try to change the name of the airport.
So before
neither did Rawlings.
Yeah. So let me dive in. People often say that NLC liberated Ghana, but as I've shown you, there were attempted coups to overthrow them, and that's if you look at what Atta particularly said, he said that his intention to overthrow them is because there's army leaders themselves have become corrupt, and it goes against the principle upon which they overthrew Nkrumah in 1966. And so therefore they want to remove them for themselves becoming corrupt more than the Nkrumah government they accused. So that is what motivated him to do so. And mind you, the 1969 constitution tend to be a problematic stuff for Buzia himself. So some of these things that people argue that they didn't listen, and then they went ahead to bring in the 1969 constitution, which Buzia became president. One, for instance,
Prime Minister.
Yeah, as Prime Minister, for instance, by bringing in about the prescription. So there is an issue, people always accuse Nkrumah about Rea Koto issue, how the habeas corpus and opportunities was not given. An important thing happened in 1969, where a young man called Salifa has gone to Conakry to visit Nkrumah. He's a teenager, and upon his return, he was arrested that he has come to the country to undertake coup under the Protective Custody Act. If Nkrumah did Preventive Detention Act and arrested people, the coup makers also came out with Protective Custody Act, and after the coup, 440 people were arrested without any opportunity to lawyers.
Wow.
And any other persons they suspected of being anti-regime.
Is this under the...
Under NLC. So, under it, before we even get to Buzia's time, 1969, this young man was also arrested with the Protective Custody Decree that he intended to overthrow the regime. And so he was sent to court. And at that court, there was Justice Antechi, who was at the High Court. And the Attorney General brought the case. The Attorney General is Victor Owusu. And when he brought the case, apparently the decree upon which he should use to charge the gentleman, there has not been signed by General Ankara. Okay? So the guy has a white defender. He's a Gold Coast lawyer called John Headley Linus. And John Headley Linus has been a lawyer since 1954. And he was to give representation to Salifa. And he has in his corner the famous lawyer, Johnny Kwashi Aiden. So they went to do this case, and then Headley won the case against Victor Owusu. When the young man, so the case is called Salifa number 1. This is Salifa number 1, the ex-party Salifa number 1. Because it was against the Attorney General, the Commissioner of Police, and Attorney General represented. Then the young man got out of the court. As soon as he was going in, they rearrested him and took him to Justice VCRAC Crab's Court.
Wow. To
charge him again. This time around, based on the same document not being charged and therefore unenforceable, VCRAC Crabs said, in as much as he agreed with the defendant that this was against his fundamental right, what the Attorney General is saying is that even if he moved here today and he allowed the gentleman to go, he can easily go and see General Ankara to sign his signature and return the following day and bring him. So even if he let him go, it will not cause so much hurt to his right. So he should face and grant that, and he granted it. It is one of the things that may go appear to attack VCRA's VCRAC crowd when he was appointed as an independent electoral commission. In fact, he accused him that he's being rewarded for the job he did for the NLC.
So your point is that this detention of this Ghana guy who went to Guinea is very similar to the Ria Koto case, which is
what is even instructive in that case was that as soon as John Headley had won this case, he went home, and before you would come and defend the gentleman in the second court, the Minister of Interior, the Dombo, signed, and the guy was picked from his house and repatriated back to England.
Are you serious?
Very serious. If you like evidence of it, I didn't know you would get here. I'll give you daily graphic reportage of it, where John Headley was.
So the lawyer for the guy was deported before
Yes.
he could defend the guy the next day.
The next.
And then the guy was rearrested, sent to a different court.
Yes.
And the judge, Justice Crabb, even though the law hadn't been signed, essentially said, we will have to hold you because the guy will sign the law anyway.
You see?
And you're saying this is very similar to the Ria Koto case.
Ria Koto case, because what it is that why Ria Koto is an elite, an institution and memorial has been given to him, and we talk about how the law was mishandled around that time.
So you think this is selective?
It is selective because when somebody is a poor man, then he doesn't have a case. And look at the maltreatment done to Salifa. It is unfortunate.
So it has elements of
legal practitioners
PDA
in Ghana,
and also
legal practitioners in Ghana don't see how the law was used against Salifa. And I'm glad that someone like Professor Eso Jando had an intellectual analysis of this where he wrote it in a journal. It is there for any young lawyer to go and look at S.O. Jando's thesis on it.
So legal history is also political.
For a very long time.
So the way the PDA is used, of course, we don't support it, but you're saying that even under NLC, they did the same thing.
Yes.
And also the Ria Koto case that is famously used as one of the ways a farmer asserted his rights against a dictatorial government. The NLC did the same thing in this particular matter, in your view?
In the same view.
I see.
And we come again to what is called people accused in Nkrumah of alien compliance, alien deportation act, where Alhaji Ahmedu Baba, Lalami and others were deported to Nigeria. You come back to Buzia's regime and there is alien compliance order, which sent away many Nigerians who were there in the country, people from other West African countries, even some Ghanaian others were affected. They were sent to Togo as a result of this. And today, that is at the crux of why NPP is not even loved at all in the Zongo communities. Wow. Because prior to that, UP tradition, okay, which NPP and the Progress Party came from, were the base of the Zongo because of the Zongo chief like Ahmedu Baba, and they had their political party, which was called Muslim Association Party, and during the Avoidance of Discrimination Act that created opportunities for parties based on religion, secular, tribal, and so on to all come together in the formation of the UP, MAP or Muslim Association Party was swallowed into that organization. So it means the Zongo communities were with the UP tradition. As a result of this policy of alien compliance order, of deporting people in the country away, which affected the Muslims, in people who were Muslims and in the Zongo communities, who were Nigerians, the Yorubas, people were forced and they have to sell a lot of stuff. It is like what is happening in America today, where Trump is using any extrajudicial means to sack people away. This happened in the country under alien compliance order, and the outcome is the long-term inability of NPP to eat into the Zongo community. So
in summary, look, we've moved away from Kotoka a lot, but my question was, how come since, of course, Buzia supported the naming, how come Echampong, Rawlings, Liman never sought to remove the name? Because people perceive all those three as not being on the right. Echampong was seen, if you look at his policies, in fact, he was head of state when Nkrumah's body was brought back. He gave him a state burial. So how come they never tried to change the name?
So what it is that Achampo may not be pro-Nkrumah, as people were saying, but his government was dominated by them. Okay. People who contributed a lot, and he was also imbued with he realized that Nkrumah's plans were good for the country, so he tried to replicate what Nkrumah started. You talk about the B-Dam, electricity expansion, and major things that Achampo operation, feed yourself, is Pan-Africanist idea, self-reliance, and so on. So his position in terms of policy, it makes him look like an Nkrumahist, and that is what happened. And during that period after the overthrow of Buzia in January 1972, people also clamored. If you go and read the newspapers of the time, there are a lot of stories who said that no, change the name back to Accra International Airport and not Kotoka, because what he came to do, after all, we thought their regime will change things. They couldn't change anything. Things they accused Nkrumah of, they have themselves are done even worse than that. So bring back the name. But then Achampo couldn't do that because he was a military man. And military men respect their fellow military men, irrespective of their differences, because if an officer falls, he have to be remembered. So
Achampo will not. And so clearly Rawlings will also not.
Rawlings will also
because
not.
also a military man.
Very good. However, it was Liman's government who then had an opportunity to have changed that. Unfortunately, they didn't have much time in government when they were also overthrown by Rawlings again.
Final question. The government has decided to change the name to Accra International Airport. Some people think it should be named after a person. Do you have any view on whether it should just be Accra, or it should go to a person, or it should stay as Kotoka? So
there's a reason we put up monument. And monument, when you put it shouldn't be divisive. It shouldn't create confusion. It should rather bring national cohesion. It should be a place that becomes a commemorative landscape. It should be a place that can attract people. People should be able to leave their house and say, we are going to this place and go and see this man for what he created, not polarizing figure. If people come out of travelers come and then they ask, who is this man? You say, oh, this is the guy who overthrew Nkrumah. I've never come across a single African-American, Pan-Africanist, or Africans from any country who even care. In fact, even within Ghana, how many Ghanaians take their children and say they are going to look at Kotoka, including those who are even defending Kotoka? So it becomes something of an emotional attachment based on partisan inclination. The desire to see anti-Nkrumah ideas being continued is what is fueling most of the defense people are giving up. But what people should understand is that the name Kotoka International Airport is not the original name. The name itself is renaming. So if people are clamoring for the name to go back at its originality, it's in tandem with our Sankofa thinking. That when things are not doing well, Sankofa, you have to go back. And this is our kind of philosophical thought. That history has something for us to know. If someone says, don't urinate here, it will bring a stench. And then you agree that what the person did is wrong, so let us arrest him and put away. And you, the person who said that the place will be taken, that person ought to be wished away. We have given you mantle, and you rather come there and you do not only urinate, but you defecate. It means you have gone against the very tenant upon which the mandate was given to you. So that is what people are talking about. The Kotoka NLC government did something extraordinary that really wipe away Nkrumah's political policy in terms of his policies, Pan-Africanist ideas, and how he moved Ghana forward. No, Buzia did that much that anybody can use him to compare. In fact, it will not be fair because Buzia didn't get opportunity to do that, but he was buried 2 years when he was whisked away and so on. So you see that. So in a nutshell, you understand those who want to change the name to Accra International. Yes, and what I'm trying to say is that renaming, people are talking about money. The most important thing is that there is opportunity for us to learn. Recently in Canada, Young Dundas Square in Toronto has been renamed Sankofa Square at the cost of 12.7 million. And these are North Americans with no history to Ghana. But Young Dundas Square has been renamed when they found out that Young Dundas was involved in delaying in the person of the abolition of slaves. Today in Germany, Mall Street, Marienstraat, has also been renamed into Antoine Arnaud Highway. And it's a Ghanaian, the first Ghanaian, the second Ghanaian to hold PhD in 1774, University of Halle in Germany. They have named him for his contribution towards philosophical thought and ideas of the time. So renaming does not mean anything, but we try to rename to reflect our existential circumstances of the time. Do people like coup d'etat today? What exactly are we teaching our youth?
We'll leave it here. Thank you, Kotoka International. Always a pleasure talking to you. So many perspectives. The debate will continue. We've been speaking to historian Kotoka International on the renaming or the proposed renaming of Kotoka International Airport to Accra International Airport. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.